Hey everyone, welcome to the 30th episode of the LIBERcast, and I have for this episode I am having a group of dedicated great workers who are actually having work on the ground, and they're great people, and I'm honored to having all of you. Thank you, people, for being there and partaking in it.
Absolutely, Fred. Thank you for having me on again and looking forward to talking with all these great minds here today.
Dude,
Glad
I'm
to be here.
Yes.
wicked excited to be here.
Yeah,
Yep, same as
pleasure.
well.
Thank you so much, Fred, for organizing. Straight up.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring up just before we're starting to have awesome conversation. I wanted to bring the uh, I'm not. I'm just gonna put it there. I'm still starting with this one. So here we go. I just want to talk about this. It's beginning tomorrow. It's gonna
Mm.
be
Yeah.
freaking awesome. There's Brendan Martin's gonna be there. Brendan Spencer is gonna be partaking in it. It's gonna be freaking awesome. Just
Leslie
be there,
Seaborn.
just subscribe, and it's free. There's no freaking reason to not like going and enjoying the 2 days. There's gonna be art and music and a, a list of like great thinkers and great workers in the way. So
Don't
yes,
forget about Leslie Powers,
Yep.
dude. She's
Yeah,
with us
Leslie's gonna be there
tonight.
too.
She's gonna
Right,
be there
right.
tomorrow too. She's
yeah. So there's what's got are you talking going to talk about Brendan Martin at
I'm going
this
to be
point?
talking about green language, synchronicity, syncretism, and the evolution of the occultism within our language. So, phonetics, philology, a lot of really fun stuff. I'm really excited to get this one out. I've been working on it for a while. So, I think everybody will take something from it. There's going to be something for the initiates and something for the advanced students. So I'm real excited to see the feedback from people on this one.
So what about you, Leslie?
My presentation is called Real Happiness, What It Is and Why It's So Important to Cultivate as We Do the One Great Work. And I'm super excited about it. I'm bringing together some different philosophical ideas about what is happiness and I'm connecting it very closely to natural law. Yeah.
Nice. Brendan Spencer, what are you
Mine.
bringing? What are
Oh
you
yeah.
bringing to?
My presentation is about internal, unity, because you see a lot of people who want to create and unite on the external, physical plane. But like I've always said, is we have to unite with ourselves first, and be a unified, being. So I kind of bring that up and I talk about, some of the proxies that are put in place as far as, these structures that are keeping people back from that internal, unity, that, connection between our mind, our hearts, and our hands.
Nice.
So there's gonna be Rick is gonna be there too tomorrow, and I think it's gonna be about shadow work.
Yeah. He's really excited. It's his first
Rick,
actual
exactly.
presentation.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's I talked to him yesterday. It was a great conversation. I really liked having talking to him. I made the test for the podcast yesterday with him. So thank you, man. By the way, thank you. Great conversation. Um, I'd want to bring up too the one great work. It's the funnel. It's gonna be there too in this page, and all these great people you have in front of you are there. Go see their work. It's all free, and you don't have to subscribe to anything. You go there and you enlighten yourself with all this beautiful knowledge and wisdom. So that's for that. Here we go. So I wanted to just bring something before because I stumble upon this conversation a lot in the freedom movement, you know, and we're gonna talk about the meat of the subject, literally. I still see people justifying great workers, justifying the use of violence against animals, and not being like very compassionate. You know, when you're doing the great work, one of the things that you learn, it's empathy for yourself, for the people around you, and even the people you hate, even people for that you're angry against, and certainly learning respect for the animals. And this shit makes me fucking angry. I
Yep.
I I I just want to bring that it's not your choice. It's not your choice to take their lives. It's not your choice to buy it.
Rather, I mean, it's not our right to take another person's life. That's property rights, right? Under
Yeah.
cosmic
Exactly.
law.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
Fred.
Doesn't matter
Yeah,
what kind of indoctrination you got when you grew up from it. But when you're talking about moral, objective morality, it still exists for the animals. It doesn't means that the animals have are able to have this thinking. You know,
Yeah, the
they cannot
capacity.
have this thinking, but we can. You know, it's learning between value and price, because essentially it's all about selfishness. You know,
Yeah.
you I the thing is, there's no justification ever if it you kill an animal, it's against their consent, it's violence. You kept this animal between walls and you treat them like things, and there's no fucking way that we cannot recognize sentience. Sentience has been proven scientifically, and you don't have to be super smart to see it in the behavior of the animals,
Yeah.
the grief and the joy and the anger,
That they display, those
social
emotions. Yep.
social skills, you know,
Yeah.
social skills. They grieve their dead.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring another thing there. Um, in science, people um, calculate the intelligence of beings by the mass of gray matter in their brain. And let me tell you, people, we're 40th on the list. We're 40th. We are the 40th less more intelligent, like, in the list. So what does it tell you about all these elephants and whales and dogs, you know,
dolphins.
Yeah,
fish
dolphins and whales,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah.
and
Crows are pretty
orcas?
smart. Yep. Pigs are
Yeah,
So
pretty
pigs are
smart.
very
Yeah.
smart. Absolutely.
Yeah.
it's not about value of life. It's about what can I do? What price can I get from it? You
Well, it's
know,
about understanding the science of objective right and wrong behavior. Objective morality applies to all sentient beings. And, this is going to be an extreme struggle for all types of beings, but all awakening is a struggle no matter what. You
Yep.
know, I mean, you cannot just sit there and deny that animals have emotions. We all know that animals have emotions. Our limbic system of our brain is the mammalian part of our brain, which is animal part. I mean, we're connected to them at that level. So I think it's very deplorable that we still see the meat industry going on the way that it is going on. It should not have got to this extreme level. And, we have to get through the people first, the science of natural law. If we don't, get to the causality of that, then the symptoms of us causing violence on the people or onto animals will never stop. So we have to start with principles first. And then once people understand principles, then they'll start to reflect that and see that in their own behaviors against other sentient beings. And then, also one more thing is that sentient is really hard for people to understand because the definition of sentient can be very ambiguous. It has a very ambiguous definition where a lot of people are like, oh yeah, a baby in the womb isn't sentient, or a calf isn't sentient because of these certain little areas. But I think that it's ignorance. It's just absolute ignorance.
Let me tell you something. If people would, you want to like really like deserve your meat, just take the fucking knife and slit the throat of the animal. Just fucking kill him. Then
But modern
after
day,
that,
they
you
think
kill
it's
the animal.
civilized to go to
You
a
kill the
grocery
animal,
store.
and then after
They don't
that,
kill them.
for the people who are hunting, they're taking the charge. Okay, they're doing winningly,
Right.
because there's consequence to that.
I think it also connects the people. If people do that, then they're making the connection between killing and eating that
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
Because we're very distanced from the meat on the shelves in the store, and it's very easy for people to just totally disconnect the reality that it comes from killing intentionally.
Yeah, it's hidden intentionally for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, murder is murder.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
animals cannot give their consent.
Another
So
thing
Yeah.
that really struck me about this was it being a blood sacrifice ritual on like
Yes,
this massive
right.
scale. And you think of like 4th of July or different holidays where everybody's out. I think Mark Passio brought up this example of, everybody barbecuing, and you walk down the street and it's like this ritual that everyone is, so many people are participating in around
Yeah.
death.
Yep.
What about slaughterhouses placed on certain ley lines, to
Yep.
invert the energy vortexes or whatever, right? Vortices.
Yep.
And then government buildings on those sites.
Yep.
Mhm.
And what else? Churches? Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, one of the
massive.
other things I would bring up is that we have the notion that animals do not have souls coming out of religious dogma, right? So we'll hear that a lot from Christians, false Christians, I should say, and that idea is a non-animism idea. It takes you away from pantheism and animism, where we understand that everything is spirit. Everything is connected to the one great spirit or the one architect of the universe, and we really need to get reconnected, like Brandon was talking about with his upcoming presentation. We have to reconnect with our own internal spirit to be able to recognize the spirit within others. We have to do that inner work first, and then we can start to see spirit in everything, in a water drop, in a leaflet, in the wind, in a tree. It doesn't matter. It's everywhere.
Yep.
And we can
And
connect and interact with it.
Yes, you
And
got that.
yeah. And, speaking of the spirit in animals, like another way of seeing their emotive, their sentient nature is like how they play with you. I have memories of my cat playing with me, my dogs playing, the birds, it's interactive.
Right, absolutely.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to be blind to not see this light in their eyes,
Mhm.
and you can see. Have you seen some videos about like scared animals,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
scared
Yep.
cows and pigs?
They
Mhm.
Tell me you cannot feel it.
Well, that's
right, and
another
they
thing
will
is that they
display
scare
fear.
them. Sorry, Brandon, but they scare them, and then the adrenaline pumps through their body, and then you eat all that adrenaline.
Yep.
Yeah. The principle of correspondence, because you were taking in that fear, you were taking in all those emotions. So what's going to be the outward manifestation of that. So we see a lot of people in fear. We see a lot of people who are stuck in that, emotional attachment. Well, what are they putting into their bodies? What are they putting into the temple? What are they putting into, their spirit? Fear.
There's the law of assimilation too. We have
Exactly.
to look onto. You become what you eat.
Right.
And when
So
everything
if
is energy, what kind of energy are we trying to choosing to consume? And what are we just, being complacent with, or being programmed to, just go with the flow, with the herd mentality in the Vaca nation, right?
And the
Eat this and what's
vibration.
for dinner and all that.
Yeah.
Right? All that.
Yeah.
I think another thing that should be pointed out is that obviously the vegan movement has been co-opted by a communist and socialist agenda, and this can be very disappealing, just not appealing to libertarians or even maybe some right-wing people who might be coming into libertarianism. It's not very appealing to them because they see that it's been co-opted by a leftist agenda. There's no real difference between the left and right, but they do apply themselves differently at certain levels. Ultimately, the government is winning, but they apply their techniques of manipulation and agendas differently to get that done.
it's
So,
because veganism is a
right, it's a political
political
movement.
movement.
Yes, right,
And it
Better than
becomes
climate change
hostile.
now, Agenda 2030. Sorry,
right.
Leslie, go.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
Well,
After you.
I've been vegan for a few years, and then I decided to go back to vegetarianism, and I've no shame about it. I have no shame about it, because you know what, I've seen the vegan movement by the inside. You know,
Hmm.
I've been there. I've been doing activism for animal rights, so that's why I'm this passionate about this subject there. You know,
What
um,
also has ties with PETA, right, and the some of the terrorist activities that they have performed. And I'm not saying the ones where they like actually are helping the animals. I'm actually talking about where they're violating individuals. They're violating other individual people. Because
yeah,
I've seen a lot of things like that. So it's definitely connected to that. And like I said, a communist agenda. So we just have to be careful. We have to be very
yeah,
wise and strategic and really discern where these ideas are being co-opted, because the dark occultists are master psychologists, and they understand that they can take even the truth and wrap it up in something that can appeal to their agenda, to use
Yep.
for their agenda, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
well, the I think there we're missing the point. We're not talking about the true thing about veganism. It's reducing harm.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Vegetarianism, people around you that they have like chickens, and chickens are like always
Hmm.
making eggs. you know if they're not fertilized, then it's like useless. So some people like would argue that it's okay to eat eggs and things like that. I do eat eggs from time to time, but
Yeah. Have you
the
heard
thing,
that chickens have been bred over time to produce way more eggs
yes,
than they're naturally supposed to, type of thing as well? That's
Yeah,
just
they're a
something
lot
I learned
smaller.
about recently. It's just like, oh,
yes,
something to
Right. Right.
consider. And I'm like, I'm kind of vegan myself, but I really don't like to fall into that terminology because of all
Yeah.
these things we
yes,
talked about.
you're right.
And straight up, like, I'm scratching my head on a lot of ex-vegans, quote unquote truthers, whatever, that are talking mad smack about veganism and stuff, but still falling into some of like the psyops and stuff that we already know and we're not aligned with, like, saying like, oh, the veganism is 20 agenda 2030 and all this stuff, and not really distinguishing between, like the natural law way of just respecting life and just trying to live life, causing the least amount of harm,
Yeah.
whether it
Yep.
be veganism, vegetarianism, if you're really doing it right,
The
you know.
future the
But
future is not veganism, it's
yeah,
insectism.
Right.
People were
it's the
gonna eat
bugs,
fucking
Right.
man.
Right. Right.
maggots.
Right.
Yeah. Then people equate the two. Right. Yeah. So
Forget
yeah,
about it,
it's
It's gonna be
yeah.
Soylent and Green. Don't worry. So.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
because if you're eating the bugs, you're not really a vegan, right?
Eat
So
the
that's
bugs.
that's that's facts, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
right,
protein, man. Get the protein.
Yeah,
Ugh.
you can't have honey, you can't do anything like that. So,
you're not even a
um,
vegetarian if you're eating the bugs, So it really does come down to that.
Right.
My approach is more so just like from a stance where, realizing I'm not a vegan and I'm not really even a vegetarian. I've been doing some serious work on that for like the last year, like serious work, where it's a tug of war, man, breaking that, habit, but consciously doing it, being aware of the wrongdoing, I think is a major step. And if we're going to get anywhere with really trying to, and this is not mental gymnastics, what I'm about to start talking about, but I really do understand that if we're as a movement or as a community, people that really care about other people and want that care to be brought over and carried over to the animal kingdom just as much, right? We all agree on that. I, however, do take the stance for now that given the current cultural climate of the state, I think that it might be wise to try to appeal to people's emotions a little bit for the time being, and try to get them to associate morality with human to human interaction for now. And hopefully in the future, if we can reduce the harm that we're doing to each other as a species, we can try to keep your fingers crossed that that type of logic gets carried over to the animal kingdom as well. If you can do both, that's fantastic. That's the goal, right? But each person has to make that decision on their own and has to come to that conclusion on their own. We can tell, we can say, hey, we can, spit some principles. We can tell them about, how the length to which this should be taken. Don't leave the animal kingdom out too. Let's care for these animals. We're their stewards. We're the ones that have the thumbs, right? You want to talk about gray matter and who's got the bigger brain and whatnot, but I don't see elephants making weapons of war and, doing these things that we do. I'm not really trying to separate us from the animal kingdom so much as I'm just trying to address because we're all living here together. That movie that Joaquin Phoenix narrated, it's called Earthlings. We've all heard of it. We've all probably watched it. I know I've watched it, and it was disgusting. And that's what really kicked me in the ass and made me want to do something about, just how am I participating in this, right? The brilliant point of that movie is that, like, why is it called Earthlings? Why is that the title? Well, we're all here on this rock in vast nothingness together. It's like like I like to picture the Earth like a space station, and we're all literally, it's like a space station, and we're all here together, and we all have a job to do to make sure that this thing keeps going, and we're kind of interfering in very harmful ways with the planet and the animal kingdom and whatnot, and it's to me, it's just like for now, because I don't want to be like a hypocrite or whatever, trying to tell people what their virtues should be and then turn around and not live up to the same things that I'm trying to tell other people to do, right? I don't want to be that guy. So as somebody who's not even a vegetarian, I don't feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like to the extent of which I should be saying anything is just like, hey, I'm not causing harm to other humans for now, and I'm trying I'm trying to reduce the harm that I'm causing to the animals. I care for animals. I have a couple of cats kicking around, and to the point of I forget who said it, but it was somebody in here tonight said something about the separation from the separation when you have the meat on the plate, right? You're not the one actually killing the animal. I think that honestly, if if a lot of these people that have like the omnivore diet, that are eating meat, whatever carnist, whatever you want to call it, I think that if they had to look at the animal while they were killing the animal, they wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it. They have to have somebody else do it for them because they wouldn't be able to do it themselves. So it's like a prescribed belief at that point where like something to the like of a prescribed belief at that point where they're only doing it because somebody like kind of put it in front of them and told them that, hey, this is how we get a diet. People like to argue. One of the common arguments against veganism these days is that like you can't sustain a healthy diet without the sort of omegas and whatever, the nutrients that you get from meat, things like tyrosine and omegas and fatty acids and stuff like that. Like, and I say to that, well, if we were free, that means our imagination is free as well. And that who knows what kind of technology we'd be able to create And who knows how much we would be able to explore and figure out how we could, sustain our lives without killing animals, without
Right.
that
Absolutely.
unnecessarily happening. It's happening unnecessarily at this
Yep.
point.
Yeah.
I do reserve the right to survive. And if I was in a
Right.
survival
Right.
situation, I really don't see there being a problem with that.
Yeah, I actually agree with that point. If you're
Yeah,
living in Alaska and you have no ability to grow crops or no ability to actually feed yourself besides fishing, then you're going to have to do that. That's
right.
just what it comes down to. That
Yep.
doesn't change the morality of it, though, right? Like, this is
No,
one problem that I see with people is that they think that since you're in a situation of survival, that it changes the morality of something, or that they can't explain it, and they're like, oh, well, since I can't explain it, then it must mean that, the moral principles don't apply here. Well, that's not the case. You just admit that, hey, that's an immoral action. I'm comfortable with saying that, and I will take responsibility for that immoral action. That's it. I had to do it. That
Right.
doesn't mean use that as a stepping stone to amplify that, though. Don't go to the extreme and constantly building a world upon that idea. I mean, we don't know what could happen. We could end up in a civil war, and the next thing you know, you might need to be eating some insects or some animals out in the woods, but you
yeah,
have to be
Yeah.
conscious of this. You have to be conscious of the spirit of the animal, of those things.
yeah,
Um,
like on some Avatar shit, like,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
absolutely.
when the deed is done and you found your way back to a place where you can carry on living according to the principles, you haven't detached yourself from knowing them, you haven't left them by the wayside, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
And once it's done, I mean, isn't that what atonement's all about? Is like knowing that you did something wrong and just kind of like
Yep.
being like, okay, I did, hey, that was wrong. I'm going to try to figure out a way to make up for it if there even is one. But I think that some sort of like absolute like absolvement of that transgression involves just the conscious, like the ability to know that what you did or doing, what you're doing or what you did was or is wrong. Like, and knowing the principles is not enough. You have to live by them, but knowing them is where you start.
Yes,
And
Yeah,
for
and what
sure.
about the Native Americans?
I'd like to
They
add
kind
a
of
few
knew
things.
about that.
Oh,
Sorry,
Go ahead,
Leslie.
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 okay, so I'm thinking about how we're all on. None of us are perfected beings, and we're
Hmm.
on paths to our awakening. And there are many, many aspects of this awakening, and none of us are perfect at all of them. And we could point fingers at each other and say, oh, you're not doing your trauma work. Oh, you smoke too much weed. You're numbing, you're avoiding, or you ate chicken yesterday, or and I'm not sure that that's very helpful for any of us, or for the mission that we have here in teaching morality and natural law, teaching morality. And then as people start to understand it on the, like you're saying, James, on the human level, then we can, it also exists for all living beings. And that is part of the awakening process that happens in layers and veils that you're lifting as you are stepping forward. And some of us find one aspect easier than another, and so we can support each other on this, in this process, I think, with compassion. I think that's important. And I think that if we get too hyper focused on something in the way that then becomes very judgy or hostile feeling, then I think we're doing a disservice to this whole effort we have of bringing us together
Yep.
in the direction of freedom for all.
Yeah.
I think that we have to find ways to find our commonalities and our uniting on principles, and then work, not that we don't call each other out in ways, but in loving ways, right? Learning how to be a team, learning how to communicate, learning how to build safety and trust with each other and with the community that we're talking to. Because we're not going to change anybody's mind if we're hostile to them and we're attacking something that they haven't figured out yet.
Right.
So that's some of
Yeah, it
my
does a
thoughts.
disservice to all of our work. It actually diminishes the value of the principles we're trying to teach. And another thing, it's funny you brought up the perfection thing. I actually was thinking about that when James was talking. This idea that we're all going to be perfectly enlightened across the board, equality of outcome in a way, right, is an illusion. Even if government is gone, you're still going to have thieves. You're still going to have violence that takes place. You're just not going to have a whole world that enshrines these dogmatic ideas, right? And that we just blindly accept all of them. So no matter what, I don't think we're ever going to live, at least not anytime soon, in a world that's just completely filled with perfected, beings that don't do harm unto each other or harm the animal kingdom at some level. But like what Fred said, it's about harm reduction. We need to reduce the harm the best way that we can. And like you were talking about, is that we have to be compassionate about that. We have to empathize with other people, and we have to come from a true consciousness place of love, place of conscious love with other beings. So, if we attack them, if we become militant with it, then it does a disservice, like I said.
Right.
So some truths are inconvenient. This is what
Yes,
you're
they
saying.
are.
Yeah.
So I like it. I like this. I like this very much. I like all the opinions different. This
Yeah.
is exactly what we need as a community of people who are into this path of
Yeah.
betterment.
And can I add one point, please?
Yes, go on, man. No problem.
And I said, as you were doing your journey, make sure you will listen to your body. That's one thing that that we do forget to bring up. It doesn't matter what kind of diet. You at the end of the day have to be the one who is in control. So you should be listening to your body. You should be listening to your being. And getting in touch. And as James and Leslie, so brilliantly put it, trying to get people to understand these concepts as far as nonviolence toward animals is going to be a whole lot harder because they don't even understand these concepts toward their own fellow, I say brother and sister. So we do have to kind of have like a base level to build off of, once we start getting people to understand these things from, human to human, from individual to individual, then we can start to raise that consciousness as far as, pushing it out to a wider, a spectrum to the animal kingdom and whatever forms of life that come in after that. So yeah, some great points that were brought up, and we always have to have this baseline to build off of. Trying from a individual to an individual, from what I've seen, is always the best step and the best approach, and not being so hostile. Not coming with this militant health veganism, because is really what's giving people a bad rap. So some great points, and I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Do you
So
guys think that a like a healthy relationship? I mean, given the whole like consent thing, right? Animals can't even really consent. Like a cow can't consent to you to take its milk, right? You can't really communicate that way. You cannot communicate with chickens to gain their permission to take their eggs. That's the hen's property, right? So, do you think that there are allowances within our base set of principles here of do no harm and take no shit, really,
Yeah.
to kind of allow for that to actually happen based on I'm
Symbiotic
based on it.
relationship, maybe?
Yeah, that's the word. I was trying to. I'm like, what's the word? I'm like thinking about
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
How many animals do that within themselves? Like
Well, they do it cross
beekeeper
species
were getting
too,
honey
right?
and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
So
They
you
do it
think
cross species as well.
right?
So
I
some
mean,
animals will feed other animals, right?
do you think that certain things like do we need to roll back certain things as far as like our I see it all the time, people separating themselves from the animal kingdom as if we're like
Right.
above all of them, right? I mean, we're not really the same, but we're not different. It's very strange. Our ability to have these conversations to use technology the way that we do. It's very strange, but we're a part of it because we exist in the same world as them. So how are we not a part of it, right? So if
Yeah.
animals can have that symbiotic relationship between themselves, so can we. Therefore, if you got a little gang of chickens out in your backyard and you're making sure that they got shelter and all the food and that you're helping them survive, can you in fact go and remove eggs from their house? You
Well,
know,
if you
and
think of shamanism, shamans ask permission from,
Right. Right.
before they cut a plant, before they, there's a concept of reciprocity and a concept of getting permission. And this awareness, like Brandon, I really liked what you said about attuning to your inner knowing, listening to your body, but also to your intuition, and to recognize that we have energy connections. We're energetic beings, and we connect to the energy of plants and animals. And there are many people who claim that they can understand what an animal is thinking. I talked to like an animal psychic, consulted her about my dog, and I don't know 100%, but I've had experiences of being in a state where I have felt very in relationship, in communication with, non-human beings. And so there is perhaps a way to get consent and to receive the message no as well. I think
Right.
we are in general not at that level of our own vibration, and maybe eating meat, from what I've heard spiritually, it lowers the vibration and disconnects you from those frequencies and vibrational energies that would allow you to maybe receive those messages from animals and plants and other things in the universe. Like we're not
You're making a very good point there, a very strong, powerful point there, Leslie, because what Fred was saying about the law of assimilation right there, right? So the higher vibration, the higher consciousness, raising that frequency up means that you're not participating in harm. You're separating yourself from that, you're distancing yourself from that. You're consciously doing that. So if you're absorbing the law of assimilation, if you're absorbing that harm and you're becoming it, yeah, you're also lowering your vibration at the same time. Like it's just how it's going to be because you are becoming a being made of harm. So how conscious can you really be? Even like somebody like me, like I struggle with it, so I'm not all the way there yet. But hey, uh, you know, what I'm trying to say. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Leslie. That's really good. That's really good.
And I
Yeah,
appreciate that you're doing the work to diminish your meat intake.
It's
yeah,
not
That takes some
easy.
guts. I get through that. I was
Yeah.
eating meat for 30 years of my life, so I went to through all of this. It has
Yeah.
been for me. It has been relatively easy. We were like in this path
Yeah.
naturally to do it, but I think that the thing that is hard to get rid of is cultural indoctrination and dogmatic belief. And I think part of what carnism is it's a cult. It's a
And I
cult
would
because
add the intake of sugar, other substances that are
yes,
yes,
intentionally
sugar
put,
is
into
yes,
our field, to diminish our capacity to for our bodies and our minds to integrate optimally, right? Sugar,
Yes.
other
yes.
things.
Yeah, those things can cause like neurological disorders. Really, it disrupts the endocrine system when it comes down to it, and that can be very harmful. I think Brandon Spencer, you mentioned earlier tonight about fuck, I had it and now I lost it. But there was something you mentioned. I was just thinking about. Oh, listening to your body, right? You said that,
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
you? Okay, yeah, that's a big part of this too, because like you got to know what you're doing to yourself, right? If you're trying to cut back on all of these things and better your habits, you got to take it one step at a time, one thing at a time. You can't go and send your body into some kind of shock or withdrawal if
Yep.
you're like cutting out so much at a time. I personally like to bring up from firsthand experience when I'm talking about these things. Like I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict, I was addicted to cigarettes. I was all of these things. And like, even in the past year and a half, there's been a lot of those things they're gone. They're just gone because I'm tired of doing this. I quit smoking. I don't even know when the last time I had a cigarette was. Like, I completely lost track of time. But so from experience, I can tell you that it's that long term. If you're looking to have like long term effects, doing it nice and easy and one thing at a time can definitely make all the difference in the world. So
Yeah.
For deep change.
yeah,
Oh, yes.
yeah. If you want it to long lasting change, you got to take it easy on yourself. You can't just
Yeah,
flip it
lighten
like a
up,
light
yo.
switch.
Raise the vibrations. And yeah, speaking from my personal experience, I've done fasting for many years, and I recently did one for 7 days. And
Nice.
honestly, I do these things because I'm at the point where I live on a frequency of non-linear lifestyle. I get sick of eating food, like straight up. Like I'm like, I don't want to ingest and digest food because I don't want to feel my body, get fatigued from digesting all this stuff and like just like the solid food. I'd rather be in that light body state. And already I kind of already have like 2 meals a day. I've done videos about veganism and vegetarianism. I have like 4 or 5 out and mentioned some of these things, and including like the law of assimilation. And that's like, what is the highest energy source that we have on this planet? It's kind of outside of this planet, aside from all the elements that we're supposed to be aligned with and in tune with, the quintessential human, right? But yeah, we take it down from the sun, the photosynthesis, to the plant kingdom, but then there's like the minerals and stuff. And dun 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 dun, dun, we get into more solid food, and then we have the meats and all that stuff. So the body's gonna struggle. I wouldn't say struggle, but it's going to take more energy to process that more denser energy.
And
So
I just want to bring something before we continue, is
Sure.
that we're not eating the carnivore animals, and there's a reason for that.
Mm,
You know,
Oh
because,
yeah.
because protein come from plants. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's why we're eating like ox and cows and all these grass eater. It's
Yeah.
because it come from there. They have this. We have all this enzyme inside of us that we can digest plants. It's and when you compare biologically to herbivores and fruit eater, like we're fruit eater at the origin, we were gatherers first, so we thrive from plant for as far as we know. I could be wrong. If someone can correct me about this, but I think for me it's more the moral way to do it. If people don't have to do it, this is not a competition, you know. It's not about who's smarter than the other. It's how you feel in your body and spiritually and intellectually. You know, I'm not here. I started this conversation and I didn't want to point people. I wanted to put my message out. It's like to stop being an hypocrite. And try to justify a mass murder. And bloodletting rituals. And if you want to really like eat meat, just kill your meat and do it, and respect your prey and reuse everything that
Yep.
the beast is with,
That's what the Native
like the
Americans did.
skin,
Right.
the bones.
They
You can
didn't waste
all
a thing.
reuse it.
They didn't even waste the cartilage.
Yep.
Exactly.
They did not waste a single fiber of that animal's being.
Right.
Everything went to use out of respect for the animal, out of respect for the life that was taken for them to live.
Yeah.
And to
and
the
then
It
they
was a
very,
still
deeper
have their type
connection.
of peace, and
this is why a strong
tribute to
part of
that
my
soul that gave their life to feeding their
Derek.
family and all that good stuff. They actually gave a shit about it.
Yeah,
And
that
spend the
movie
time and
Avatar is
add
not
that
just
inner work
for
and
not just
recognize
for
the soul
Hollywood.
within that animal.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kept
Yeah. So
interrupting you there.
Oh, it's all good. I kind
for
of
first for I wanted to bring it because it's coming back like a lot, and people are like lashing onto each other, and like you have I don't want to use this word, but you have all the extremes and the polarities of the culture, and they're clashing together. And and the thing that I found sad, it's there's no reconciliation. People are fucking getting angry, and then there's clashing, and there's nothing happen after that. There's no constructive discussion. Nobody is growing from it. You know,
Dialectics. What?
like
You know.
Yeah.
like vegans. I
Yeah.
met vegans that they were like way out there, man, way out of this world.
Yeah.
You got to be fucking delusional from time to time. It's fucking crazy. I've been there, and I've been I've seen the intersectionalist and the feminists taking over the movement.
Right, right. That's kind of what I was speaking upon. It's also an issue
Yeah.
because we see a lot of people who are in those movements that still support statism. So
Big
just
time.
because we reduce the harm on an animal kingdom, which we absolutely should be doing no matter what, doesn't mean that we're actually going to get rid of the root of the problem,
Problem.
which
Yeah.
is the false belief in man's authority and claiming to be the most high here on the planet. You
Exactly.
know, so we can still claim to be the most high and all be vegans and vegetarians. We can still have egos out our ass and still be like enslaving each other. You know,
Yeah.
Yep.
we could set the entire animal kingdom free and the entire human race can still be completely oppressed and completely enslaved. And that's why we have to go back to causality and go back to fundamental principles first and then work our way outward. No matter what,
Excellent.
there's no way around that.
Mhm.
Priorities, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have to do a insect right activism now.
I'm pretty
For
sure there
every
are some
crickets
already.
and every
Yo, real quick,
every
man. To tie in all this stuff, I mean, when I got on the line, you guys were talking about projective or predictive programming before we went live. And have you guys seen the movie Snowpiercer?
Oh
Not
yeah,
the
Oh
it's
series, but the
yeah,
amazing.
movie.
great
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
movie's
great
great.
movie.
Oh,
Yeah,
what?
And how it started, right? They had those, aircrafts, spraying their, ice crystals.
yep,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes.
Engineering went bad, and it turned the place into a snow globe or whatever.
They were
Yeah.
What is it
trying. They
called?
were.
Yeah.
It's
Snow.
And
called
then they were eating bugs on the plane or on the train.
Snowpiercer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
All
so
the
Snowpiercer.
slaves and indentured servants were eating the protein bug packets. And
Yeah,
then
the whole movie
the
is
entire fleet.
it's an allegory of class warfare as well. You
Exactly.
start in
Yeah.
poverty in the back of the train, and then you incrementally work through the train in the movie, scene by
Yep.
scene, up into the higher echelons of authority. And
Yeah.
you get to see how nasty and brutal it is on all levels. And then
Yeah.
you get to the head of the train, and it becomes a Ouroboros pretty much, and it ends up
Wow.
just feeding itself.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And at the end of the movie, the guy is sitting there eating a steak.
Yep.
It's also kind of like you always see this, right? The rich guy eating the steak in these movies, right? Well, it's also like in The Matrix where you have the character Cypher who
Yes.
goes back into the system and he's eating the
Mhm.
steak. So you'll see that in movies constantly.
Yep.
Hey,
One thing.
I know it's
hey
straight
guys,
up
I,
positive.
I hate to do this, but I have to take off. It's Friday night.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna spend the rest of the night with my wife. So
Oh man. It's all
Hey,
good.
that's good
seeing ya.
attention, Spence.
Yep.
Thank you,
Peace out.
James.
Nice to
It was
Love
good
you.
meeting you,
meet you.
James.
Thank you for
good to
being
meet
here,
you.
man.
Good to meet the guys that I haven't met yet. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys again real soon. Fred, thanks for
Yeah.
having me, man. Brandon, stay classy. I'll see you guys.
Bye, man.
Bye, James.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Peace.
Good luck tomorrow on funnel. All
Thank
three of
you.
yous.
Oh yes.
Thank you.
Gonna
Thank
be
you.
Freedom under
awesome.
natural law? What? That's right.
Peace out.
Peace. Wait, so real quick, I'm curious if any last thing on Snowpiercer, if you want to move on to other things, but there's a really good video on YouTube. I think it's even 2 parts that they try to tie in. It might be theoretical, whatever, but it ties in a lot of coincidental things in regards to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
What do you think about that?
I think they have a very compelling argument with it.
Yeah,
That's
man,
for
and like
sure.
scary shit. I
Yeah, it's
was
pretty
impressed by
interesting.
whoever did that. Like, props to that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want to talk
Um,
about the series, episodes that are fucking great, it's The Prisoner.
Yeah,
Oh
that's a
yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that
Oh
one.
my god, I like it. I did not went through all the episode, but the 13 episode that I watched is
Yeah.
I was like, I need to watch it again, and again and again until like I get every bit, because I followed the Unslaved podcast with Michael Tessarian, and then he
Mhm.
does talk about the series, and it's fascinating.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
Oh,
all
cool.
the psychological aspect, and then the archetypes, and then you have
Yeah.
all the way you twist the thing, and the brainwashing, and the culture that is oppressive when you don't follow what the village is going. Everybody becomes like already oppressing with
A
number
cult.
six.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating stuff. Have you seen the Snowpiercer series?
Yeah, I have.
No.
It's really
It, it's
good
it,
too.
it's not
Oh yeah.
better than the
No,
movie.
it's
I
not
like more
better.
the movie, but it's
I
good.
actually did
Okay.
a audio narration like every time I watched the movie. So I recorded an audio breakdown of each episode. I mean the series. So each episode I
Sweet.
did like a, however long the episode was. I just kept jogging down notes about the scenes and the allegory and the predictive programming and everything that I saw in it. Maybe one day I'll release it.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
you want to bring up the death of the child inside the freedom movement?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think it's definitely something that we've all struggled with when we become awakened, right? Or we're on the process of awakening. And I know personally, I've struggled with this, and I know a lot of people around me, like, I won't name names, but a lot of people around me in this movement definitely, I've talked to them personally, and they've struggled with this as well. Um, and I feel that the first thing is I'd like to kind of clarify that what I mean by the death of the child is the death of the inner flame. It means the death of imagination, creativity,
Mm.
happiness, joy, the awe moments that you get from enjoying nature itself. Because children have this natural ability to go out in nature and just find and discover so many things in nature, and they connect to the spiritual aspects immediately without having any of the conditioning that we all have got over the years. And we need to really get in touch with that because it helps to develop our sense of sovereignty. It helps to develop our sense of well being, and it actually builds better empathy with, like we were talking about the animal kingdoms, but also with each other. And it also helps us to not go into an absolute, like, left brain, rigid, skeptical, violent, hostile person when we start to awaken. And for most of us, I don't know about you guys, but I suffered from a right brain imbalance where I was a chronic hedonist, and all I wanted to do was be entertained by everything. That's all it was, entertainment every single day, no matter what it was. And for me personally, I struggled with getting back in tune with that light-sided heart, that light-sided nature of myself. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I think I see it everywhere in the freedom movement where we're becoming so serious about everything that we don't enjoy the little aspects, the love that we have, the companionship that we have, because we're so focalized, so hyper, focused on slavery, on these issues of the world. And it's not doing us any justice because it's actually breaking down a spiritual part of our humanity. And it's like an addiction. This is what I wanted to say. It's like an addiction when you're a chronic hedonist. It is an addiction. But when you fear that, right? It's like an alcoholic who never wants to go to a bar. Once you've got away from that, you fear going down that slippery slope again. So nobody ever wants to get back in tune with their happiness because they fear they're going to go all the way back into the system. So you have to have discipline. You have to have the courage to be like, yes, I can handle this. I can watch a movie and learn something from it. I can go out and have fun with my friends. I can do these things in this world, even though I'm being oppressed. And it's something that I feel a lot of people are lacking in the freedom movement.
There's a
That's
there's
so
a
interesting.
Yeah.
there's a tendency in the culture now. It's victimhood. You know,
Mm.
Right.
everybody is offended by everything. I feel, makes me feel bad. My emotions. Because they kind of they have not grown up. You know,
Yeah.
um, what it comes to, it's like you forget. your inner child and this playful aspect of yourself, and you become one at the same time. It's like a
Right.
paradox by itself.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And
I have, go ahead, Brandon.
oh, sorry, just real quick because I can kind of relate to what Brandon was saying. Is when I started my journey, how I was more like left brain, dominant. Like I was just focused on knowledge. How I have a big head, so how I was trying to take in as much knowledge as possible. For years and years and years. But what I started to realize is it did kind of send me toward a kind of controlling method, and then I had to sit down, with myself and kind of, figure out, like how can I balance myself, like how can I be more creative, and I started to try to incorporate, like certain modality, certain, modalities to kind of even itself out, because if you're just stuck into the knowledge aspect like we have seen, then people won't really, push it out in the form of action. You just, worried about, taking in more data and more data, and there is no outlet. Well, that has consequences because nothing ever really changes. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you can have all the knowledge in the world. If you don't put it into, have manifestation, then what good is that knowledge? So yeah, I can totally relate to that because going down this, this path as far as the freedom, the freedom movement, we do lose sight of, fun and, things that make us happy because we are so focused on, freedom and trying to put out information that we kind of lose sight of taking care of our own selves too. And that, means of creativity, spending time with our loved ones, spending time with our friends, because we all think that we are introverts and all that stuff. So yeah, a great point for us to, talk about, and I can definitely relate to that.
So
My path has been almost I would say the opposite. I was over responsible, over serious, took everything on my shoulders, in the rat race, the running the hamster wheel. And then I was, single mom for many years, like with 3 little kids, and in that fight or flight survival mode. And I lost a lot of my ability to be childlike, to have fun and express myself and really even be myself fully. And I think that the structure of the work week and everything adds to that and keeps people trapped in worry and anxiety, which also takes away and suffocates creativity, and even things like, you know, I don't know, and then you become more awakened to the reality of the world, and it blows your mind, and it's tragic, and it's devastating. And if you're not like, I work as as a therapist working with people in mental health, so I've been exposed to a lot of tragic things for a really long time. But I think part of the reason I've survived it is a certain in touchness with a certain naivete, which has also done a disservice in my life because it kept me from looking at some of the realities that would blow my reality. And I think a lot of people are stuck with that. They don't want to look because it'll blow the reality, and it's very tragic, and it leads to depression potentially. And so I think a lot of what's happening in our movement is the depression of seeing how bad it is, and we can get stuck there. And that makes us stuck, and I think it diminishes our effectiveness in inspiring people. And a lot of my presentation in Funnel tomorrow is talking a lot about this and how important it is that we balance ourselves and that we find our creative spirit and we find our intuition and we cultivate those things, and we don't think that we have to sacrifice our own joy because this world's in such a serious place. Like, I think that we need to cultivate our joy and our awe of the
Right.
world and connect with nature in ways that is like inspiring to others and energizing to ourself. It's this creative spirit, this inner flame is what keeps us going. And so it's
Yeah.
so important that we not work so hard that we spread ourselves so thin that we're bitter and angry and discourage. No, that's not going to inspire anybody to follow our path.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, well said. And I'm sure a lot of people that content creators can feel that burnout and a little bit imbalance towards the left brain or whatever, right? And maybe stressing on likes or YouTube fuckery, like what happened to these two gentlemen on the right with some strikes. Really,
Yeah.
you spreading too much good health information that some people don't like. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I've been there before, but, and I haven't even been able to see that yet. But
it's not gonna happen. It's not happen again. Let me tell you.
yeah, I'm
gonna
really
be fucking
curious.
ready.
I'm curious like a kid, and what happened to the curiosity within a lot of people that
Right.
that inner child that and that's one of the main core principles of truth seeking, isn't it? That
Yes.
curiosity of yourself, how much you think you know. I was always
Right.
curious as to why the hell I can't use more than 10% of my brain. I got all this junk DNA apparently, all this stuff. What the hell, And that goes back to why we're in this hell cycle of things having to consume other things just to sustain their own fucking life force, energy. Before Atlantean times, Hyperboreans, whatever, were like breatharians. We didn't even have the same digestive system that we have right now. But anyways, curiosities. But what I wanted to say also real quick is that, and you guys hinted around this, and I think Leslie mentioned it earlier with everything else you said that was so wonderful. Thank you. Is that who is actually has taken a stroll with their child or the inner child or whatever and done that inner shadow work? I feel like once people actually do that and alleviate a lot of that burden or inner conflict or whatever, things just alleviate naturally on their own. And like you guys said, getting back in touch with nature. Back when you were a child, you'd be running around barefoot and hey, what's going on, and talking to the trees, feeling the breeze, blazing over at the seas, whatever, however you please. But anyways,
making poetry.
What keeps you young? Having young kids around you.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well,
Unless you're a single mom overworked, then they wear you out.
yeah, I got so many single mom friends that are like on the right path, and at the same time, it's like they're burdened by either their ex baby daddy who's a freaking narcissist or whatever, and like they're constantly in this like fight or flight mode, like you said, and it's hard for them to get out of that negative feedback loop stuff. It like brings me to tears thinking about this stuff. So what kind of solutions would you have in regards to that or anything really? Sorry.
You want to say something, Brendan? Brendan Spencer or Brendan Martin?
You got it, Spencer. You want it?
The best thing that I would say is, first off, continue being honest with yourself. If you, see that you are not in a reasonable relationship and you are trying to, work your way out of it or move forward, be honest with yourself and do what you can and try to surround yourself with positive, how lovable, how knowledgeable, people, because when trying to overcome things is always, helpful if you have that support system, because we may be strong in some aspects and we may be somewhat, not as strong in certain aspects. So trying to get out of a relationship or move forward, when you have that support system to kind of fall back on and to help encourage you, then it always makes things easier.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with that. I think one thing that we should discern here as well is that a lot of people fear the child because the child is naive and very gullible. And that's one of the things that a lot of people would look at it as a danger to be in the child mind, is that if you're there, you're just so open-minded that you can be programmed with anything. So you have to have the resilience. You have to have already done work to reinitiate back with the child. So you have to have matured. You've had to have gone into the left brain a little bit. You've had to have gathered knowledge. And then once you've gathered the knowledge of natural law and your principles, then you can really start to have fun again. You've earned that privilege back into reality. because now you have principles. Now you can engage in these activities of entertainment, and now you know what right behaviors are and wrong behaviors are. And this is the difference between somebody else who has no knowledge of natural law, who has no knowledge of objective morality, who is just out there blindly, chronically in hedonism constantly. And that's the difference between someone like that and me, who has actual knowledge of, principles and things like that, where now, hey, I can go out, I can have some fun, I can go play some pool, I can go have a drink with my friends. I know what right and wrong actually is. So you need to do that work first. You need to get that under your belt first. And then another thing I wanted to say is that the esoteric mysteries reveal themselves to the child mind. Like Leslie was saying, is that, it's the awe moment, right? So it's that discovery process of nature. And natural law is not where it ends. That's just the beginning of it. There's so many mysteries in nature that we can uncover and discover or rediscover, because we're rediscovering a lot of this stuff actually. So that's what we need to get in contact with, because the esoteric mysteries will only start to show themselves to a person who has the intuition, who has that open mindedness to that, to receive that truth, right?
Yeah, right on. Really well
We
said,
have
Brent.
there's the concept of nescience and ignorance too. There's the factor,
Mm.
you know.
Right, absolutely.
And I think children for that are very connected to the source when when they're young, and they don't struggle with cultural anxiety and like social predisposition and influence from propaganda and things like that. So they're emotional beings. We were talking about animals. Animals are emotional beings. And Leslie, I wanted to tell you that the relation that we have with animals is empathy. We are
Yeah.
communicating emotionally with them. This is how we communicate. And as human beings, between us and the other, this is still emotional. This is still intuition. And this I had the chance to work with some horses, and these creatures are special. You can see it in their eyes. They're not a mindless beast. you know they're talking to you without open their mouth.
Yeah.
You can see it in their eyes, you can feel it. It's like projection. It's the same thing. you know and why some people are afraid of animals or afraid of human. They're gonna bring people with uh like more problems. you know they're gonna you if you are afraid of dogs and you're going to see a dog, the dog will know it, you know automatically, just like that. And you don't know what the reaction it's gonna have. Some dogs are gonna be like, are gonna go away and stay clear, but some animals will go forward. you know in attempt, I think it's not an aggression. I think it's an attempt to make contact. Even with when you're talking about dog, Brendan Martin, you have dogs. The behaviors of dogs they're very friendly. They're keeping their distance when it's unknown people. They will quickly like stand the what kind of people they are. you know and I think this part here, as human, and in the shadow work, the shadow work brings you intuition and emotional connection and empathy, and all these things that are basically our sixth sense. Emotion is our sixth sense. It's intuition. It's like a compass that like leads you. That's why we're bringing uh, objective morality and things like that, because it's a very natural reaction to all kind of stimulus. And Brendan Spacer would talk about these things, because the podcast, even if it was censored, it was fascinating. About the behaviorism and how you're raised into, if your parents were there emotionally and physically and they were bringing you all the need, or if you were abused and rejected in your life. Children are just like that. They're gonna feel it, and they're gonna make you feel it afterward. They're like mirrors, basically. I'm
When
bringing
I
that.
was
Go, Leslie, you go on.
when I was a little girl, it's a little story that kind of brings together a few points that you guys have made. And when I was little and I had this dog, and I remember I was in a very, I don't know, like sad, kind of lonely place as a little girl, and I didn't have anybody that I felt I could talk to. And I would lay on the floor and stare in my dog's eyes, and I would tell her everything that I was feeling, and my worries and everything. And I had this very deep connection. And then I remember my parents took me to church, a Protestant church, and it was like Palm Sunday. And I don't know, the minister was waving around a palm frond. But he said something. He said, animals don't have souls and they don't go to heaven. And I was like, I had this like reaction. I was like, no, he's wrong. He's so wrong. And it was like a pivotal moment where I was like, nah, I don't buy anything that they're telling me here. And I knew, because I had that openness of being a child, and I had that experience, and then it connected with that inner wisdom that I listened to, and it wasn't beaten out of me or anything. And so that was really important in this evolution that brings me to where I am now. And animals are really important for therapy. Horses in particular are really powerful therapeutic agents for equine therapy with kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought all dogs go to heaven anyways, right?
All good
I'm more of a
dogs.
cat person myself, and I've had a few of my friends call me the cat whisperer, but that's another story. But yeah, cats are lovely creatures and everything, and I've experienced firsthand with my own cats and this and that, and like heard other stories that, yeah, a cat sitting on the lap, feeling into that vibration of the purring and stuff, like it's really therapeutic. It's medicinal as well, and my ex-wife, it would help alleviate her really intense menstrual cramps as well. This cat would know what to do. She's like hurting, and it would just go sit on her lap, and then work that magic. But yeah.
Did you know that the purring of the cat is as the same level as children crying? That's the one thing I heard. Yes, they're like they learned with the time to imitate like human behavior, but principally cats are psychopathic killers.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really independent.
I can argue, man. Like,
It's just because they're smaller than you and they're afraid, but 30
Yeah.
30 30 pounds of more, they would try to kill you.
yeah, oh yeah, they would eat us if they were bigger than us. My friend would always joke around.
Sure.
They try to. But the
They
good thing for us
understand
is we got
freedom.
these.
Yeah,
Right.
frisky.
Oh
I
man.
and I would say the same thing about dogs. Dogs are really good hunters.
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
They're strong, they're fast, and
Yeah, Brandon, Martin, you got a really nice dog. Isn't it like part wolf or husky or something?
Yeah, I have 3 huskies right now.
Damn.
I have an Alaskan husky and a Siberian husky, and then they bred, and I got a mix. So
Wow.
yeah, they're amazing dogs, and they got the wolf gene in them, and you can tell, they go primitive sometimes, and you can just see it in their body language and everything. But they're such great dogs. They're great with children. I have my nieces and nephews come over, or my nieces come over, and they, play with my dogs every once in a while, and they're just really good dogs. So they're amazing. It's really interesting. And from my studies into Egyptian totemic sociology, supposedly in totemism, the idea of dog being man's best friend comes from this old tale that the African gray wolf was the first animal to ever come into the tribe and befriend human beings. So it was the first animal. Like, yeah, we had interactions with animals, but it was the first animal that actually came from nature and actually integrated into our society. and integrated into our, ability to hunt, ability to survive, but also just spiritual aspects that were taking place there too. And this is why we see so many, archetypes of like Anubis in Egyptian mythology. That's why it was the spiritual aspect, the guide, the spirit guide through the underworld, right? Through the Duat in the Egyptian mythology, because the African gray wolf was a symbol of spirituality, the guide through the spiritual journey,
Wow.
and that's where we get that idea. So I always thought that was really intriguing. There's
And
also something kind of interesting too, is that it's possible the Sphinx was actually an African gray wolf, pre to its anthropomorphication. So I thought I'd bring that up. I always enjoy telling people that one.
Nice.
hey, Brendan, which one is the talker? The talker we had on the podcast.
That was the baby girl. That's Maru. Her name is Sashomaru, which means the destroyer in Japanese.
Wow.
And yeah, she likes to talk a lot. So, and she destroys my stuff too. So I named her
Well,
right.
When you're
She-
listening
she-
to my presentation, listen for the snoring dog in the background.
Okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised mine haven't actually got up yet. Usually when I start talking, they start.
It just walked
getting
by.
normal. Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one just walked by like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. Okay.
At least
And
they
I
give a
haven't
woof
rolled
about you.
off.
Right.
She-
Right.
He agrees on that government is slavery, though.
Yeah. Oh
There you go.
yeah. Yeah, they're funny. I love my dogs, and it's the same thing. I've had animals around me my entire life, and I've had a deep spiritual connection with them. And I used to lay on the floor, very similar to you, and just look into their eyes. I've had many dogs pass on my farm, and they're such great companions. And it's not just dogs. Any animal can become that if we start to reconnect with the animal kingdom. We
Yeah.
see this now. We see things that we would never have thought that we would see in nature occurring now with human beings stewarding the animal kingdom. You have different types of animals becoming best friends all over the place, right? So it's like you see a bear with a wolf and you're like, what? No way. And then you see them playing together and you're like, oh my God, this is taking place, right?
Yeah.
And it all started with like cats and dogs. You're like, no, they won't merge together. And now everybody has a cat and a dog in their house. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Trippy. I'll just say too, I think that animals, and I'm thinking of dogs in particular, they are mirrors of yourself, right? And you can learn about yourself in relationship to them because they're so responsive to the messages that we give them. So I tend to be a pushover, and my dogs are kind of neurotic and they want to like be right on me all the time and lay on my
Right.
bed, get in my way, and it teaches me about how I need to set more boundaries, right? And that's
Right.
the theme of my whole life, really.
Yeah.
And I can learn that balance of boundary and love or affection or whatever, and that helps me grow. So
Absolutely. Another thing I would bring up is in the tarot card, the card 0, the Fool card, the character, the archetype has an animal companion, usually a dog, a white dog, and I think that's very symbolic of the journey, that you should have that type of companion. White can represent purity, obviously, and it can represent initiation. It can represent the thirst for truth. But it's also that
guide.
companion to love and that connection to
But
the
that
animal
companion
kingdom.
helped him from falling off that cliff because he's sniffing the
Right.
daisy of death.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
right,
and
right.
Take that
like,
leap of
hey,
faith,
we're on a
yep.
mystic journey.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I look at it in two ways. Like you're taking the leap of faith at one point, and then when you come back around, the 0 card comes back around to itself. So it's also you coming home and the animal companion welcoming you back, from your journey.
Lord.
So you can look at it two ways. Like you're going on your journey, it's your beginning, and then it's also the end. You're coming back to the place where you started.
and it can
Yeah.
prevent you
Well said,
from
Brandon.
falling in again, like a relapse, right? By kind of barking, warning you, and biting your coat.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah.
That made me think of, I mean, that dog in the tarot, the fool full card. It looks exactly like Snowy, Tintin's dog, right?
Right. Yeah.
He's always on adventures, man. That's cool.
Yeah, L. Frank Bond, I think, or Baum, is the one who did the archetypes for that. And
Yeah. Huh.
yeah, it's very esoteric. Wizard of Oz is very esoteric. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Crazy,
Cool cats
crazy
in
all
there.
in there.
esoteric,
That courage.
Yeah.
And then the tarot has the woman with the lion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The courage card.
And that
Yeah.
came out way before Wizard of Oz, so I wonder if they were playing off of those archetypal things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, he was a theosophist, is what he was.
Mm,
The author of the original Wizard of Oz magazines or whatever it was, publications. So he was a theosophist. So he embedded theosophy, which incorporates many occult traditions into a synthesis, and he was embedding all that within that tradition. Mark Passio has a great presentation on it, actually.
Yes.
yeah, like everything I learned from life was in the Wizard of Oz, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how- yeah. Man. I haven't seen
Yep,
it
love that
in ages, but
presentation.
it was really good, man. Really good.
So yes, we're
Oh yeah,
now we're
real
in
quick.
21
Oh, sorry,
minutes
Fred, go.
in it.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Um,
winding down.
Yeah, no
so
worries.
we can stop it now. And it was I appreciate every one of you who've been there and sharing your time. Thank you very much, people. I like it. Thank you, the two Brendans, Derek, Leslie, and we had James, who it has I sadly I don't have his poster for but it's Shatter the Illusion, if I'm not wrong. It's gonna be on
Shattering the illusion.
23rd, 24th.
In 2 weeks.
24th.
Yep.
2 weeks, yes.
Yep. Yep. 2 weeks.
Brendan Martin, do you want to just plug the conference, and then you can all if you want to bring up your work so people can acknowledge it if they don't know you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should be missing out on the Funnel Conference coming up tomorrow, actually, which is really exciting. There's going to be top caliber speakers from, Brandon Spencer and Leslie and Chris and Mark Passio is going to be there. There's going to be all kinds of people there. It's going to be an amazing event. So definitely check it out. And you can, get the website off the screen right now. And you can find some of my work at seedtruth.com or the onegreatworknetwork.com. And I'm also on YouTube and Odyssey and stuff like that. So,
Yes.
Brendan, you want to plug your
Yep.
stuff?
Like Brandon said, there's no reason for you, to miss the conference. Even if you can't, be there for the weekend, the videos will be uploaded, afterwards. So there's no reason for anyone to check it out. I am on the One Great Work Network along with, Brandon and Leslie. Soon to be banned off of YouTube since I just got my second strike. Because I'm trying to
Yeah.
get banned because they're not going to shut me up. So fuck them. I am on
Yep.
Odyssey.
Get
I'm
'em.
on BitChute. And then again, fuck YouTube.
Mm.
Communist
Limited
pieces of
hangouts.
shit.
YouTube is the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to change their behavior. Speaking of behaviorism, what you guys are, the title of the
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're salivating when they're seeing the money coming on.
yeah.
This is
They're
what
working
this
for
is
the
what
devil.
happened. Yeah, Leslie,
Leslie, after
you have a website, a
I have
page
a
on Facebook.
Yeah, my website is alivethrive.life, and you can find some of my work there. I'm still in a learning curve around technology so that I can get more videos on there. I reached a GoDaddy wall of some sort, but I will get through it. And then the One Great Work Network, I have some interviews and some of my presentations as well. Yeah, and I'll be at Funnel tomorrow.
Yeah,
fun.
it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. It's the lineup there.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
it's a little
candy
different.
for
Just
everyone.
this is one of the original posters, and some people have dropped out a little bit, so there's a little different, but still, it's going to be awesome and great. And
Yep.
Okay,
come on in.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
that was a version updated there. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Wouldn't it be great if, all the bars and restaurants or whatever, that, be showing all the football games because it's such a religion, right?
Yeah.
They would be,
Right.
posting conferences like that, man, like the good old days in the good old taverns.
And it's
My
Before there
free.
was
friend,
that type of media, of
Oh, it's
course, but
free.
you know what I mean.
my
And
friend is
folks be
actually doing
congregating
a
on some real conscious shit.
my friend is actually doing like a pizza party at Domino's, and he's gonna live stream with a projector at Domino's the conference. So
Awesome.
Nice.
yeah, I was
Nice.
like,
So
oh, okay,
cool.
cool.
I love
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
that.
what's up. Yeah,
That's great.
gather the
Derek,
folks, yeah.
Right.
you want to plug your stuff, Derek?
Oh yeah, who am I? I mean, I kind of go by another moniker of Awakening Mind, which is one word, YA, not your mind, but yeah, you know what I mean. But anyways, I got a lot of music on the scene, been doing it for a dozen years, and just trying to be a conscious content creator in many different varieties, not just limiting myself to music. And that's why I really enjoy and appreciate, opportunities like this, and talking with Fred and trying to get more involved with folks in network and elsewhere, and just keep cross pollinating. And I'm trying to, throughout my work, I'm just trying to showcase the truth in good presenters of that, and hopefully those that are listening to whatever I got going on my channel can check that other stuff out. So it's all about
Awesome.
spreading the love, spreading the knowledge, and understanding that natural law is king. And bada boom, bada bing, let freedom ring.
Beautiful. So, I want to thank everyone who will listen to it, who will listen to it. Thank you very much for your support, and everybody that partook in the kind words and all these things. Thank you very much for that. You're part of the great work. We are one of the pillars of it. And this, I want to repeat that because it's not about me, it's about truth, it's about the great work, and this is what we're doing there. I This is just one this is a project that I wanted to bring for so long, having all these beautiful people together and sharing knowledge and opinions and even debate and argue if we need to. We need this stuff. We need
Okay.
to talk and like adults and having strong conversations. And for us, even for me or for you, it's growth. It's growth for the listeners, and it's growth for us. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the vegan part, and I wanted to bring that, because this is one of the subject that put fires, and
Yeah.
it was beautiful. It was a beautiful conversation. Thank you very much. So everybody, um thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one. I don't know when, but it's gonna happen. Thank you. Bye.